Let's see now. This must be the place. Oh, yes.
Yes, madam?
Oh, I didn't see. This is like a doctor's shop. You have Oriental rugs for sale.
Ah, indeed, madam. The very finest. What can Omar show the gracious lady? A rug of heavenly blue, perhaps?
Oh, that sounds nice, but it must be too much.
Ah, pray be seated, O gracious
yes,
lady.
Yes.
Omar will lay before your startled eyes a rug of greatest beauty. Behold!
Well, that is nice, but don't you have something with a more definite pattern?
Oh, surely Madame is making me jest. In this rug are woven secrets passed down from generation to generation. You could not find another such in the whole world.
Is that right? But I'd like a pattern with a little more character, though.
Allah be praised. The secret of undying beauty is subtle design. It has been so down through the ages.
But it looks wishy-washy to me.
Gracious lady, this rug brings with it the magic of the East. It whispers romance.
Well, I'd take it if it whispered a little louder.
Maybe if I told her there's another magic carpet and she could take it out for a non-stop flight, he'd have made a sale. Anyway, it seems that everyone's looking skyward these days, ourselves included. For we're about to consider the possible private uses for aircraft after the war under the good guidance of our science reporter, Emerson Markham. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Bob Stone, and how do you do, everyone? We're indebted for the ideas we're about to discuss to Ralph H McClarre, aeronautical engineer and associate director of the Franklin Institute at Philadelphia.
A low bow to Mr. McClarre, then. Well, Emerson, probably every one of us at some time or another, has wished for an airplane of our own, so we could hop in it from a nearby field, take off, and descend close to our place of business or whatever, untroubled by earthbound methods of getting places. What are the prospects, anyway?
Well, Bob, according to Mr. McClarre, the nature of private flying after the war will depend upon the purposes for which the individual uses his airplane. And the purpose for which the airplane is used will depend upon the facilities available and the performance characteristics of the airplane or types of aircraft available to the private users.
Sort of an endless circle, isn't it? How about tossing in a little prediction right about here?
Well, Bob, predictions are most times a precarious venture. It's doubtful if the 1910 visionary could have foreseen the things to come for the automobile. Millions of cars produced each year, and the myriads of highways and byways which have been constructed have allowed man a useful and independent means of travel and getting from here to there. The automobile allows us to move about sitting down, whether it's around the corner to the drugstore or across the country to vacation at Yellowstone National Park. In contrast to the automobile, the airplane is still a beginner, and much has to be accomplished before it can become as useful as the automobile.
You sound quite reactionary, Emerson. What sort of future does Mr. McClarre see for the private plane?
He pointed out that one of his good friends in the Civil Aeronautics Administration said, sure, I want an airplane after the war, providing I can keep it in my garage. He evidently wants a roadable type of flying machine. Mr. McClarre pointed out that this would be one step toward a more usable airplane. An airplane which is roadable would make it possible for a two-car family to get along with one car and one airplane. Maybe, as developments progress, a universal machine which flies and autos will be the answer to use and utility.
I'm surprised you haven't mentioned the helicopter yet, Emerson.
A practical, dependable, and easy-to-operate helicopter will provide many uses for a flying machine impossible to get with a conventional fixed-wing type. Backyard landing areas, central city landing facilities would enable us to use the helicopter in much the same independent way we use the automobile. However, Mr. McClarre pointed out that a great deal of research and development work must be accomplished before this type is a really practical flying machine and can be used to economic advantage by the average potential owner.
Well, I guess we're started in the right direction now, Emerson. Did you and Mr. McClarre discuss any types of flying which haven't been tried as yet, but which loom as possibilities?
Oh, yes, Bob. There's one variety, a convertible helicopter which would rise and descend vertically and also fly fast and efficiently as an airplane. One inventor adopted the slogan, land anywhere, anytime, and get there in a hurry. One type of airplane which transforms from an airplane to a gyroplane has already been built and flown. Now, it's not too great a step to consider this idea developed with a power-driven rotor for vertical ascent and descent. Then fix the wing and fly as a conventional plane from place to place. Mr. McLaren said we might allow our imagination to run ahead in high gear and consider a possible airplane with a jet-propelled, single-blade rotor for takeoff and landing. Then stop the rotation in flight and align the blade with the direction of motion for minimum air resistance or retract it into the fuselage.
How soon will these special types of planes be available, do you suppose?
Certainly within the next 10 years. Meantime, the conventional types, with special aids and devices, improved light radio equipment, and with simplified control and operation, are only waiting the war's end prior to quantity production for the private operator and owner. They look forward to such uses for the conventional type of plane as training, pleasure, sporting events, weekends at the country club, air commuting overnight to the mountains, rent it and fly it, vacation by air, hunting and herding cattle and horses.
I suppose they'll be used most for pleasure.
Not according to Mr. McLaren's way of thinking, Bob. He believes training activities will require the greatest use of the private type of airplane for about 5 years after the war. The several 100,000 pilots trained to operate military aircraft will have to have some retraining in order to fly their own rented, smaller planes. They'll have to become familiar with the civil aeronautics regulations and know the rules relative to the safe operation of private planes, safe in regards to other aircraft and to property and to lives on the ground.
Yes, after flying combat planes, you'll have to get used to flying and landing slower planes. And then lots of people who don't know how want to learn to fly.
That's right, Bob. Oh, there's a lot of air conditioning going on today. It's evident in the civilian pilot training program. The plans for more than doubling the present number of airports and landing facilities, the establishment of pre-flight training courses in high schools, and the present daily contact with aviators.
I suppose with all this future flying, things will have to be a little different on the ground, landing facilities and so on.
Yes, they will, Bob. But here's the kind of picture Mr. McLaren painted for me. Maybe we'll want to make an overnight trip to somewhere just to get away from all business and city influences. All we'll do is just go a short distance to our local air park, climb into our own or a rented plane, and fly to one of our many newly constructed landing areas. There we'll find facilities for eating and recreation, or perhaps just swapping yarns about a stone fireplace. And then maybe we'll retire to our plane, open the spacious interior of the fuselage, pull a lever or two which converts cushions and seats into a bunk, climb aboard, and settle down for a comfortable night's sleep.
That idea of renting a plane's a good one. Maybe everybody won't be able to afford one.
That's right, Bob. Mr. McLaren called it a we rent it, you fly it service. The way he sees it, many of us will rent a plane to fly for pleasure and maintain our skill at the controls. And then, for a trip, business, or vacation, we'll merely telephone the renting establishment. They'll have the plane all ready for takeoff upon our arrival at the field. We'll simply check in with proper credentials and logbook and climb in and be off to our destination.
Yes, but suppose you arrive at your destination, finish your business, and impossible flying weather came up.
Well, then you could return by train or go by way of the nearest commercial airline.
Yes, but how would the rented plane get back to home base?
Oh, easily enough. Someone from there who wants to get here will average out the ferrying problem of the airplane.
Very neat. Any other new developments we should know about, Emerson?
Prior to the war, the Aviation Country Club was a growing and active enterprise. There you find all kinds of recreation for all of the family. Now, in post-war times, Mr. McLaren said, these clubs might well be the real center of community activities. Communities further away from the crowded cities where the air is cleaner and cooler and fresher. And it's entirely possible that the local shopping centers of the future will be located adjacent to the Aviation Country Club, the air park, or the community airport. This would make available many and more uses of the private airplane.
Thank you, Emerson, for an interesting peek at the future. And ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to have a paper prepared by Ralph H McClarre, which contains the story we brought you here, plus other possibilities for private aircraft in the future, which we haven't had time to include here, all you have to do to get your copy is address your request to Excursions in Science, in care of the station to which you are now listening, asking for scientific paper number 202, entitled Possible Private Uses for Aircraft After the War. That's Possible Private Uses for Aircraft After the War, scientific paper number 202. Your copy will be sent to you free of charge. Next in the order of business come our questions awaiting answers. The questions you're about to hear, ladies and gentlemen, have been sent in by people like ourselves, laymen with a scientific curiosity. The answers reflect the best information obtainable, since they are based on facts provided by staff members of the General Electric Research Laboratory or other equally trustworthy institutions. Well, Emerson, let's start the ball rolling with this one. It comes from a gentleman who asks, how can I ascertain the magnifying power of a microscope?
Well, there are various ways of doing it, but the simplest, in spite of the fact that it's tricky, is to take a piece of lined paper large enough to project out from the microscope stage about a half sheet and place it under the microscope. Then focus it, and incidentally it works better with the lower powers, so that two or more magnified lines can be clearly seen with one eye. The other eye should be kept closed. Following this procedure, the paper extending out from the microscope should be viewed with the other eye, while the eye over the eyepiece remains closed. By opening and closing the eyes alternately, and finally viewing the paper with both eyes, it's possible to superimpose the lines.
Yes, but how can you determine the magnifying power from that?
Well, I haven't quite finished yet, Bob. Let's say that the two magnified lines appear to cover a distance equal to that occupied by 20 of the non-magnified lines. This can be determined easily enough by marking the distance occupied by the lines which are not magnified and counting the number of lines it embraces. The magnification can then be determined by dividing the number of lines seen under the microscope into the number embraced in the same apparent distance on the non-magnified portion of the paper. If we see two lines under the microscope which, when superimposed on the paper, equal 20 actual lines, we can estimate that the magnification is 10 times, or in microscopic terminology, 10 diameters.
This next young man says he observed the lightning and heard the accompanying thunder during a sleet storm. He'd like to know what caused this unusual occurrence.
Well, though that is an uncommon occurrence, it is known to happen, Bob. The conditions are similar to an electrical charge is produced in the turbulent air which accompanies the movement of a warm front, the warm air passing along over the cold. Now, this warm air has its positive and negative electricity, separated by the movement of charged snow and sleet particles. When the potential is built to a sufficiently high voltage, a flashover occurs between a region of excess positive electricity and another of excess negative electricity, which is what we call lightning. This separation of the charges in the winter thunderstorms is related to the fact that there is a large variation in the size of the snow and the sleet particles.
Well, that takes care of that one very nicely. Let's get on to this next one. It comes from a lady who asks us to differentiate between crystal and ordinary glassware.
Well, we could spend a long time on that question. Briefly, let's say that at about the beginning of the Christian era, means were found for producing the first relatively clear, transparent glass. Transparency and freedom from color are very desirable qualities in blown glass. An early name for such glass was crystal glass because of the desire to produce a glass as colorless and as transparent as pure rock crystal. This term is still in common use today to distinguish such glass from colored, translucent, opaque varieties.
But crystal and glassware aren't synonymous, are they?
No, Bob. Perfection is the first requisite for crystalware. It is heavier than ordinary glass because it contains a great deal of oxide of lead. In fact, lead is its essential base. The lead oxide increases the refractive index and accounts for the sparkle and the brilliancy obtainable in no other way. It resembles rock crystal in its properties, especially in transparency and trimness. In other words, you might say that crystalware is a form of glassware, heavier and more brilliant than most glassware, free from color, with a high degree of transparency.
This next customer would like to know the uses of the following: solidified alcohol, solidified gasoline, and solidified turpentine. In addition, he asks how paint is enabled to stick to a metal.
Well, solidified alcohol is used as fuel for small cook stoves.
Oh, canned heat?
Yep. And solidified gasoline is used in the flamethrowers used in warfare. Now, about solidified turpentine, we're not sure, but believe that it's probably used in floor wax and furniture polish. That's merely an assumption, however.
Now, why does paint stick to a metal?
Well, paint adheres to metal, which is non-porous, because of a physical chemical reaction which takes place on the very thin surface layers bonding the paint to the smooth metal surfaces.
Well, we'd better not stick around here if we know what's good for us, because our time is up. So I'll just say thank you, Emerson Markham, and goodbye, everyone, until our next excursion in science.